Hello and welcome back to another video. I am Angst, but you can call me Katie. Now before we get into this week's Taboo Tuesday episode, which is on oppression and privilege and how they're bullshit, you guys voted on Twitter for the next topic, and it was actually how minorities can be racist. Now in writing the talking points for that video, I was coming to this position where I really needed to already have a video on oppression and privilege and maybe even systemic racism or institutionalized racism. So I had to make an executive decision and push that one back to next week and instead do this one so that it all kind of ties together and there are no weird loose ends. So let's get into it. Some people find it easy to agree that institutional racism still exists in American culture, or that even white privilege exists. Others, such as myself, say that this simply isn't a possibility. It's not there. Now, before we dive into oppression, let's throw out some definitions for those of you who aren't fully familiar or you just need a refresher. Oppression is prolonged, cruel, or unjust treatment or control. Oppressive is the exercise of authority or power in a burdensome, cruel, or unjust manner. And institutional racism is any system of inequality based on race. The fact of the matter is, nobody in a first world nation is experiencing oppression. That equality is thanks in part to events including the Civil Rights Movement, laws such as the 14th Amendment and the Voting Rights Act, and legal cases like Brown versus the Board of Education. These were brought into existence to ensure equal treatment of all races within America. However, many still contend that institutional racism as well as white privilege are real. And frankly, I can't even express how incredibly ignorant you would have to be to believe that institutional racism is a reality in modern America. On to the theory of privilege. The concept of white privilege in particular gets a lot of play among so-called progressives and liberals. It is all but a fantasy due to demographic reality. The belief is that these social advantages and benefits are around purely to help whites and somehow cause issues and injustices for minorities. Unfortunately, the evidence doesn't back up the claim. Here's a few fun facts. According to the Institute on Assets and Social Policy, whites do not have the highest household median income in America. Asians do, to the tune of roughly $57,000 for Asians and $48,000 for whites per year. However, when you go more in depth, it gets interesting. Japanese American households are at $70,000 per year. French American households are around $60,000 per year. Meanwhile, Iranian American households are at $66,000 per year. Then you have Dutch American households at $59,000 per year. And by ascending order, the households that make the most are Indian Americans, Filipino Americans, and Taiwanese Americans. So, Asian privilege as a concept actually makes a little more sense. But hey, you won't see liberals arguing for Asian privilege. That'd be racist. The argument they stick to in this topic area is how a black household makes less than the white household, and how that in itself is a sign that we live in a racist society and blacks are being given fewer opportunities, and if you wanted to hear more, well, you'd walk into a liberal echo chamber, so let's move on. I ask you to then explain why in America is the average Nigerian household making $61,000 per year compared to your everyday French American household, and your average Ghanaian household is at $57,000 per year, right up there with some of the Asians. How is that one part of a group claiming to lack oppression is doing fairly well in comparison, but the claim is that all of the people under this umbrella are lacking privilege? The reality is, most of the problems faced by racial or ethnic minorities are caused almost entirely by their own actions or lack thereof. There are two key steps a person or group can take to avoid poverty, the first of which is staying in school. Graduating high school, trade school, college, university, and so on increases your chances of not being poor. Of those who complete some form of college, only 6.6% fall below the poverty line. Blacks have a rate of dropout sitting around 31%, while whites are at a rate of 14%. This shouldn't shock you when whites have an average higher income. Meanwhile, 17% of Nigerian Americans have master's degrees, It shouldn't shock you that their incomes are so much higher than the average Black household. It's almost a guarantee that if you complete school and obtain some kind of degree, you'll have a higher income and be away from the poverty line. The second thing you can do to avoid poverty is preparing to be a parent if you want or plan to be one. Many Black Americans have children out of wedlock or broken parent relationships, resulting in 72% of Black households in America being led by single mothers, in comparison to 25% of white households run by a single mother, and only 17% of Asian households are operated by a single mother. So don't blame the white man for fatherlessness and wedlock and damaged parent structures when it's completely on the individuals of their respective groups. In conclusion, white privilege isn't a thing. Asians are sitting pretty, and you make your own wealth or poverty based on your choices or lack thereof. That's going to be it for this video. Like, comment, and share as you please, and I'll see you next time.